Okay, let's pick up where we left off in the last workshop. Because we downloaded the site, the template, and we didn't really do anything. We just redeployed it, which is actually good if you got it redeployed. But we didn't, if you recall, we didn't actually do anything with it, right? So what I'm going to do right now is sort of go through real quick what we did last time, just download and then redeploy, so that everyone can remember how that works. And then today we're going to actually do some stuff with the site. We're going to actually make our own changes, okay? So as always, make sure you have an account on Turbo right here. Make sure you have Node.js installed, the LTS version. Open up your terminal and make sure you have the Turbo CLI installed, whichever one here should. Again, I do this for the sake of people watching the video. They may have not caught the first part. So make sure you have the Turbo CLI installed, and this is how you would do that if you don't have it. And then if you do have it, you can check the version number, and this is the current Turbo version number right here, 36.16. If you don't have 36.16, if it's below that, like 36.15, then run the update, do the install, and you should be good to go. Okay. Yeah, so you might be on 36.15 because I think I published that like 3 or 4 days ago. Not a big deal. Just do it again. Just do this part again. And you should see 36.16 after you do that. If you're watching this video later and you have 36.17, you're good to go because you have an even more up-to-date version. So that's in the future. So I'm talking to people in the future. All right. So then head over to Turbo, make sure you're logged in. Click on Gallery. Click on Developers on the left side and do a search for Turbo 360. Scroll down until you see the logo. And as always, that's the account where I put all the projects for these workshops. It'll always be there. Okay, so click on that. And on Monday, we worked on this one. You don't have to do this part. I'm just going to sort of redo a lot of what we did on Monday, but feel free to follow along if you want to. It's really up to you. But again, just to be clear, you already did what I'm about to do. So I'm going to download this guy. If you want to see what you're working on, you can click on View Demo, and that's like an example of the website you're about to download. Okay, so here's the website, right? And I'm going to download it by clicking Download Source. And that downloads a package.zip file down there, right? And if I open that up, I'm going to rename the zip file blog tutorial. And then I'm going to slide that over to my desktop, just because that's where I want to do my work. And then I'm going to unzip it. And this folder is the content of the website, is the source code of the website. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the zip file because we're done with it. And if I open it up, you're going to see the source code of the website. I'm going to remove the node modules. So now we're getting into the actual code. So who can remind me what the node modules are? Dependencies, good. And then I'm going to cd into the. By the way, here's another way you can do it. You can do cd, you see that? And you can just drag the file into it like that, and that'll work too. Okay, there are multiple ways you can work with the terminal. Okay, that's why, I don't know if you remember, Tina, on Monday I said try dragging it onto it, see if it works.
I'm doing it.
I was just
I've been doing it.
That was a guess. So that's why I was like, oh, maybe that'll work. Okay, so I removed the node modules, right? I removed the dependencies, so that's not good. We just lost the dependencies, right? So how do I put them back in?
npm
Louder.
Install.
Good. Good. You guys have been studying, right? The repetition is starting to sink in, right? That's what I was saying earlier about repetition. We're just going to do the same thing again and again until you get sick of it. Until you're like, we know the next step is npm install. We know it, and that's how you get better at programming, or really anything. But that's what we're going to do. So again, what are the node modules?
They are the dependencies.
Right. What does that even mean in a general sense? Dependencies.
It's what it depends to run.
Correct. Can you give me an analogy that's not programming related?
Analogy that's not programming.
Right.
It's just really just a package. You download the package.
No, take the programming context out of it.
Okay.
Is it like the formulas you need?
Just give me an analogy, like a real life analogy.
No, I meant like a formula for.
Like baking a cake. To bake a cake, you need eggs. You need.
Good. Yeah. Keep it simple. Right.
Good. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Very good. Right. A car has dependencies. What are some of the dependencies?
You need to do
Engine. You can't run a car without an engine. That's a dependency. Give me another one. Now your example. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple.
I don't know, to shop, you need money.
Yeah. You want to buy stuff, you need money. Right. Keep it simple. If you really understand it, you can come up with simple examples, right?
My stomach is growling now. It's a dependency. It needs food. So that's why.
Okay, so we reinstalled the dependencies, which means now we can do what? Run the project, right? We can test it out locally. So before I do that, I'm just going to open the code. So I'm going to click the code and drag it over onto the VS Studio code icon. So here's the source code of the project. This is a Node Express project, again, to be clear. So as opposed to, for example, like Ruby on Rails or Django or .NET, those are different coding environments. Those are all different ways of doing the same thing. We're using Node Express, which is an alternative to Rails, an alternative to Django. So we're using a different web framework for this project, in this case, Node Express. Okay, we reinstalled the dependencies. Let's say I was completely new to this project and I want to run it as a dev server, as like locally, and I have no idea how to do that. Where would I look? Where would be the right place to look?
JSON.
Good, very good. And then specifically, the scripts, right? It's kind of hard to tell which one does what, but in this case, serve line 8 is the one you would run to run the local server. So that tells us which script to use, which command. The word script is basically synonymous with command. Okay, so which command to use to run the local server. So I'm going to use the serve command. So I open up my terminal. I make sure I'm in the root directory, right? And I type what? Very good. And this word right here is the name of the script, right? So we do npm run serve. And then it tells us right here, the dev server is running on localhost 3000, which is like a quote-unquote website that only exists on our computer. So we can head over to the browser and just paste in localhost 3000. And we should see the same website we were looking at a few minutes ago. That means we have successfully downloaded and ran the project. Right? That's what we were trying to do. Good? So we have confirmed that we have the same project, and just to be sure, I can just open this up again. Right? Here is the live version, and here is the local version, right? So they're the same, almost. Some of the blog posts are different, but the appearance is the same. So good, success, right? We have it running locally, so I can turn off the server now. Well, how do I do that?
Controls.
Good, very good. And then what we did last time was we deployed it to our own staging environment. So I'm going to do that right now. So the Turbo environment, in order to do that, I have to create basically carve out some space on the server, right? Claim some space on the server. And the way you do that is you go to your account page. And this tab right here where it says downloaded, that keeps track of all the websites you've downloaded, right? So if I click on that, you should see your site on here. Now, I don't see it on here because I own the site. So it's like, it doesn't match up. But let's say it was the first one right here. This one, I click on this button, clone environment, and I give it my own name. And I click the clone environment button. And what that's doing is it's creating some space on the Turbo server for you to publish your website. Okay? And that's what we did at the end of Monday. Okay? So that takes about a minute or so, and then when that's done, you end up with a dashboard that looks like this. Okay, so this represents the space that you carved out on the server for your own website to publish. Okay, So Turbo is what we call a hosting environment. And we carved out some space in the hosting environment for ourselves. It's like you have your own little parking spot in a huge parking lot, right? And you have your own spot. That's where your car goes. And like it's by number, so like you own it. So if somebody else takes it, you can be like, get out of here. It's my spot. That's kind of what you just did. Okay? So now what I need to do is connect my project locally to the remote hosting environment. This is called the hosting environment, right? So the way I do that is I go back to the terminal, and everyone else follow along to whatever extent you can. I want to make this part is pretty important. I want to make sure everyone can publish. Okay, you got to make sure you log in to Turbo, obviously, otherwise. Okay, and then we do Turbo connect. And it's going to ask for your site ID. So you just you copy that from the dashboard. And then your API key. You see that? API key. So you just same thing, copy and paste it. Copy and paste. And what that does is it connects your local source code to the environment the hosting environment you created. Okay, it's kind of like saying, I claim that parking spot. Like that's mine. Does that make sense? So now that your source code is connected, you can do Turbo deploy and then throw that up onto your hosting environment, and you've published your website. Actually, I'll just do it because why not? It normally takes about 1 to 2 minutes. And when it's done, it'll spit out the actual domain that you own, like you claimed. Okay? So right now what's happening is it's taking the project that we have, and it's packaging it up and throwing it up onto the hosting environment. That's what all this is doing right now. And then when it's done, it'll like carve out a domain for you. That's this right here. See that? That's your domain. And then you can just copy and paste that in, and that's the website you just published. Okay? And that's how it works. All right? So basically what we've confirmed is what we're doing locally is reflected on the actual what's called the staging environment. Okay, this is more of a staging environment because obviously this URL is not like a real URL, right? So it's more of a staging environment. And that's obviously very important because what you do locally should be the same as what people see on the actual internet. Even though this is a staging environment, it's actually on the internet. Like anyone can go to it. So you want to make sure that is in fact accurate, right? So that's what we've done here. Okay, that's always a good way to start. Because then you know that what you're working on, like on your computer, like will be the same as what you see online. Okay, that's obviously very important. Good. So between Monday and now, who got their work online? Okay, good. So most of us are able to follow along. Good. Okay, great. So now basically what we're doing here is just confirming once again that what we do locally is accurately reflected online, the actual internet, which is obviously like the most important part, right? So now we can go back here and start digging through the code and making it a mess and doing all sorts of stuff with confidence, knowing that what we do will show up on the actual internet, okay? So I'm going to go back and run the dev server again. So npm run serve. All right, and let's go back to localhost. Now we're back on localhost, right? And let's go back to the code. Now if I open up the views directory, or the templates, same difference. We have 3 templates. We have obviously the home, which is the home page, it's obvious. We have the post.mustache, which who remembers what that was for? Louder.
It's the HTML template where you will do where you can see the content.
Of what? The content of what? The post, the blog post, right? The individual blog post,
Yeah.
correct. So we worked with that on Monday, both of those pages. There's one other page template that we didn't discuss. What is it? About, right? There's another template here that we didn't even get to on Monday, the about template, right? So if you open up the routes, right, and then the page route, the one that we worked with on Monday, I'm going to get rid of this example comment. And the page route, that's where we do all of our request logic, right? We worked on the home page and we probably touched on some of the post page, but there's one more page we didn't even get to, which is the about page. All right, so if we scroll down, remember we worked on this one, line 40, the individual post. But look at right here, my line 62. It might not be exactly the same as yours, but my line 62. We have another path. That's called a path, right? Called about, which eventually renders on line 72. What's going on line 72? Or my line 72. It might not perfectly line up with yours.
Taking the info and sending it to the user. That.
Be more specific. What is line 72 just doing in a simple sense?
It's sending the data about the about page.
It's sending the data to what page? Yeah, the about page. It's just rendering the about page. And what does line 62 tell you?
What you should be getting to place on the about page and get. So what information you should.
That's not what the router, that's not what this means exactly.
Where you should be. It's the path.
The path.
To the about page.
So how do I synthesize that information onto the actual site? Like what is that, how can I confirm whether or not this is accurate on the actual website?
Pulling it up.
That's the about page.
So how do I do that?
You would
Click
on
on
the
the about.
your URL. You'll do a backslash and then put about.
How do you know it's /about? How do you know that?
That was the path.
That was the path, right? That was the path, right? So that path /about is this on line 62.
Okay.
And this render command is taking the about template, this guy, and spitting this out. So in other words, that's the about template. Okay? So if I open up the about template, the about.mustache file, this is what I should see in HTML code. So the HTML code that I should see, or I'm going to see, is what this eventually renders. Okay? So I'm going to open that up. Here's the about.mustache. You can just double click on that. And you see some HTML. It's not that much, 130 lines. We see these double curly braces. Who remembers what this is all about, these double curly braces?
Yeah.
So those double curly braces indicate what?
Pull data from the JS.
Yeah. What is that? What is this called? Like, well, I'm not really sure the best way to phrase the question.
Is it handle?
Sorry?
Handle.
Object.
Close. This is just a placeholder, a template placeholder using the Mustache templating engine. So you see this .mustache file? That's a templating engine, right? Mustache is a templating engine. What is a templating engine? In general, what's a templating engine?
Creating a template.
It's the way, easier way to get your data.
Say that again?
Is it an easier way to get the data?
Be more specific.
Puts data in the template.
Correct. Right. if you have it in your notes, look up your notes. Again, this isn't a test. I'm not testing you. Just punch up your notes and just tell me what you see, right? It puts data into your templates. That's what a templating engine does, right? Mustache is a templating engine, right? Or one example of a templating engine. There's a couple others that are pretty popular. Mustache is pretty popular. Who can remember any other popular templating engines? Just throw them out there.
Would it be like those websites that already have a designer now, like
Mm-mm.
WordPress? or
No,
something?
that's a different kind of
That's
template. They same
Okay.
name, but it's a different concept. But Mustache is one example of a popular templating engine. There's about
Python,
5 or 6.
Java,
What's that?
Python.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Python.
That's a language.
Oh,
I've mentioned a few before. And I'm going to ask this again. So write it down this time.
oh, Express.
That's a web framework. Don't guess, Rashid.
You mentioned it, but I only wrote down was
Okay.
mustache.
Well, a couple of popular ones are handlebars.
Handlebars.
Handlebars and mustache are very closely related. They're basically the same.
I thought handlebars was part of mustache because it sounds.
It's
like,
pretty
I thought
close.
so too.
It's
That's
pretty
why-
close. They're like 85% identical.
So
Wig.
so
Sorry?
dot. is-
Wig.
I don't know if that's in it. It might be. If it is, I don't know about it.
Dot. DOT.
I don't know about that one.
EJS.
Yeah, EJS is a templating engine that used to be called Jade. It's not very popular, but it's been around. Another one is Jinja, Jinja. These are popular templating engines. You're going to come across these. I just like Mustache, but it wouldn't be like a bad thing if somebody else is like, I'm a big fan of handlebars. Want to use that instead? That's fine. It's all the same. Okay, so these double curly braces means we're using the Mustache templating engine or handlebars because they're pretty much identical. Who remembers what this little caret sign means?
Partial.
What's a partial?
Has a lot of information in it.
You gotta be more specific than that.
It's when you inject. It's a lot of shortcuts. HTML shortcuts.
You gotta be more specific. You're not wrong, you're just being, you gotta be more specific. A partial is when that line 6 isn't really one line, it's like 15 lines. You're injecting a huge chunk of HTML. Okay? So partial represents blocks of HTML. Okay? That's an important concept that's going to come up. So make sure you understand that. Okay? Why would we use a partial? Why couldn't I just take the entire chunk of HTML and just put it in there instead? Which I could do, but why don't I do that?
Because some pages repeat.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If I open up the home.mustache, look at what I have on line 6. It's the same exact partial, right? So if I open up the partials folder and I open up the head mustache folder, which is the mustache file. These 8 lines of code, instead of copying and pasting those 8 lines over and over again, I can just copy the partial, like that. That way, if I want to make a change here, it affects all the pages at once, rather than going to all the pages individually. That's why we use partials, okay? It's very important, make sure you understand that. So, here, we have the header partial, right? Which means in the partials folder, there should be a file called header.mustache, which there is. This is quite a few bit more lines. It's 56 lines, right? And this partial right here, if I was new to this code base and I was like, what does that do? I can just take it out and save it. I'll just remove it and save it. Everyone do the same thing. Right? And then if I go back to the site. Here's the site on localhost. All I did was I removed it. So here, it used to be there on line 12. I just removed it
Just remove it, okay.
because I might be new to this code base. I mean, maybe I was just hired yesterday and my boss is like, I need you to take this and like rearrange the, I don't know, whatever, the logo, right? And I'm like, okay, no problem. Let me just get started, right? And the first thing I need to do is figure out like what's what, right? So something I would do is like remove the partial, and then I would here's the page right now. If I reload it, what happened?
The title is gone.
All the stuff on top is gone. So what does that tell me? That tells me that that partial code represents what? All the stuff on top. Right, exactly. And that's how you kind of figure out where the pieces connect. Right? So I want to put that guy back because obviously that's important stuff. Right? So if I put it back and I save it, and then I reload, back in business. So in other words, this block right here, from here to here, that's the header.mustache partial. Okay, am I making sense? Okay. So, in other words, if I open up header.mustache, all this code right here, these 56 lines of HTML, represents this chunk of UI. Now I know where to go if I want to change the logo. You see, this is how you kind of figure out how projects are put together. Right? Or at least I'm like one step closer, you know? So it's like maybe your job, you're hired, yesterday, and your boss is like, first thing I want you to do, Tina or Talia, is change the logo, right? And there's no direction, whatever. There's no like, here's the source code, here's the part. They don't tell you any of that. Understand that this is how it is in the real world. Okay, it's not like in like these coding schools and like boot camps and whatever, where they just spoon feed you all the information. It is not like that. Okay, in real life, it's like, here's what we need from you. Go. I'm gonna go back to my 25 meetings and take care of generating revenue for the business. That's how it works in real life. So,
That is very different.
what's that?
That is very different.
It is. He's
Yeah.
right. We hire developers all the time. And
So
they just give them that legacy code and send them on their merry
a personal pet peeve of mine is when we hire like someone who's a little bit more fresh, a little bit more green, and they're just 8,000 questions a minute. And not only that, but sometimes they'll get like slightly indignant that we're not answering all their questions. It's like, hey man, like we hired you to do this because we're really friggin' busy. If you can't handle it, then maybe, like this is the job. Like this is the job. Okay. So, and when that happens to me, what happens all the time, like I just remind myself, like, this is the job. This is what they pay me to do. And like, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, there's no documentation. Yeah, things are breaking over and over again. Yeah, this is an outdated package. Yeah, this is the job. This is what they pay me to do. All the time. All the time.
We're redesigning an application, and it's just amazing everything he says. I'm like, he's absolutely correct.
Documentation coming.
No,
that's-
nobody has time for that. It's just like,
Yeah, nobody has
because
time
we're-
for that, right?
because we
Nobody
work
has
in
time for that.
I don't know about you all, but we work in an agile environment. So every 2 weeks we have to
Yeah, Scrum, Agile, all that stuff.
it's like I say spit out like new applications because we have clients all across the world that are constantly using it. So we have to, if there's an issue with they can't log into something, the URL is not correct. It was like we constantly you gotta just fix it.
Yeah,
and
that's it,
you
yeah.
present it out to the feds and then keep it moving.
And I mean, the reality is like you have corporate clients who are paying you millions of dollars a year to get these things working. They don't care about your documentation. They don't care. And they don't care about the junior developer's experience. Like, this is the job.
Don't you waste money that way?
What
If
in
people
what
have to
sense?
keep going back and figuring it out.
No, that's a good question. that's a. I'm gonna pause the video because I don't think people are gonna care about this part. But that's so we have our about page, and we're using the Mustache templating engine, and we identify that the header.mustache file template, partial, is what determines what shows up here, right? And the way we did that is by going to the about template and removing the header. And if you do that, that's what disappears. So that we can tell that that's the piece of code that determines what shows up on top, right? So let's put it back. So if we open up the header Mustache, these 56 or so lines of code are what determines the visual UI here. So let's break this down. Let's take that logo and let's just replace it, right? So if we go to the top, we'll see a bunch of HTML. It looks a little bit overwhelming, but the more you work with this, as with everything else, the easier it'll get. You'll see here on line 5, there's an IMG tag that stands for image. So if I remove that, if I highlight the entire thing and I remove it, my hope is that this logo will disappear, right? And what that tells me is that that one line of code is where the logo is being rendered. That's how you kind of figure stuff out from a UI standpoint, at least. Like on a visual-based project, that's kind of how I break down like what's going on where. Okay. So here I'm going to replace it because we don't want to lose it. So let's reload that and make sure it's back. Now let's take a closer look though at like the actual image itself. So an IMG tag has the most important attribute is the SRC. That's the link to the image, right? So the SRC, which stands for source, is right here, right? And that's the URL of the image, but it's not like an actual URL. It's in a bunch of curly braces, which means what? The curly braces represents what?
The template.
Template. It's a Mustache template data, which means that data is being piped in from the server. If I take a look at the actual image on the console, so if I right-click on this and I do inspect, here is the image tag. It's kind of hard to see. You guys see that? But that's not at all, like this URL is not at all what's in the code, right? It's totally different. So what's going on is that this text right here is being injected into the Mustache template in the data object. If I highlight this text and copy it, so you can, in the console, you can like double click and highlight the text, and then copy it, and then open another browser, another tab in your browser, and then paste it in, you should see the image. Okay, everyone do that. That's an important skill. Learning how to, do you want to get comfortable with this console? Or technically it seems, yeah, I'll do it again. So you right click on the image or control click, same thing, and then inspect. And that will show you the actual HTML that you clicked on. Okay, and the SRC attribute is represents the address of the image. So you could theoretically you could just copy that and paste it into another tab, and you should see only the image.
It just doesn't say inspect on that.
You might be on a different browser. Make sure you're on Chrome.
I am.
So again, the important thing to understand here is that this image URL that you see here, which is like a pretty long like jumble of text, is not at all what's here, right? It's clearly two different things. So what's happening is that the templating engine is injecting data into that template placeholder. And that's happening in the server, right? So if I go back to the page.js route, specifically the about route, which we identified earlier, this data object right here, or I should highlight it right here on line 72, that's the data that's being passed into the template. Remember we did that on Monday and a couple times last week?
Wait, can I see which data is being passed again?
On line 72 right here, this data object.
Okay.
So, which is the same as line 63. So on line 63, that's where it comes from, and we're just passing it in on line 72. Okay? Inside that data object must be where that property exists. Okay, so if you look back at the header.mustache, you'll see on line 5, it's referencing a global data key. Okay, this is going to be a little confusing because we're now entering new stuff. Like this is no longer a review. So that global data key is what stores the image logo, has a key called image logo nav. So we got to find that
So that's
data
the image.
somewhere.
That's the image.
Yes, that's where we're going to find it, is a better way to phrase that.
I have 3 curly brackets.
Oh, for now, don't worry about it. It really, even if it was 2, it'd still work. But for now, like, just pretend like it's just 2, it's fine. So we have a global key, and inside that global key, there's an IMG logo nav key. So we got to find that, and that's where that image value is going to be. So that gives us sort of a clue, like an indicator, like, all right, we need to track down that guy. It becomes kind of like a where's Wally, like where's that guy? So if I were new to this project, if I'd never seen this before, what I would do is I would copy like the last one, IMG logo, like the final key, right? I would copy that, and I would do a search throughout the entire project, which you can do by doing Command-Shift-F, and then just paste in the value. And you'll see the search results returns 3 locations where that text shows up. One, 2, 3. But which one do you think is the one we want?
First one,
Why do you say that?
because it's the title.
Come again?
It was the title of the image. Well, the image was the first image on the page.
It is the first one, but that's not the reason. So you're right for the wrong reason. So Rashid is right. We want this one, but who can guess why?
It's the same as the one in the console.
So we're copying this value, but it's being referenced from that value, global. And look at what it says right here, global, right? So it kind of matches in 2 areas. Does that make sense? Global and image logo. Like it's like more, it matches even more than these guys. So if I open that up, you'll see the key right here. And this long string right here, the value. That looks like the image URL that we were looking at a few minutes ago. You see it? LH3 Google user content. If I go back, look at that. You see it? It's the same. So that means we found the correct location of that image logo. And this is exactly how I would do it. I would do a search, and I would identify which one has the value we're trying to manipulate, and then I would adjust it. So we think we found it. It's a pretty good likelihood, but we can confirm it. We can be really sure by replacing it. Does that make sense? Like we can really test it out by swapping that out, just removing it, and finding some other logo on some other website and using that instead. Right. So let me try that. So let's go to Turbo. Well, this isn't going to work because this is a white text against a white background, right? So that's no good. But if I log out, since I wrote this website, I know that if I log in, or you know what, better yet, I'm going to use this right here. You see where it says Chloe Davis? I think that looks better anyway. So I'm gonna find that site. So I click on Gallery, and here it is right here. Okay, and then view the demo. So all I'm doing here is I'm going to grab this image, which is going to work because it's dark text against a white background. So that's what we need. So how do I do that? I can right click on this and copy image address. You with me? And then I can go back here and I can paste it in. Just paste it, Control V. Now before we test it out, this part won't make sense for now, but just bear with me. You see where it says equals S1024? Just get rid of all that part. That's called the query parameter. We don't want to add any parameters. We want the raw image. And again, I don't expect you to understand. We'll cover that through repetition. Okay, we'll do it again on Monday of next week, and again on Wednesday. So I swapped out one image for another. So if I go back here and I reload, now before I do that, we want to make sure we know what our expectations are, right? So what do I hope to see?
The colored image in the back. The colored image in the back.
Literally, what is it going to say? Chloe Davis.
And replace.
Chloe Davis. That looks pretty good, actually. So we have confirmed that we now know where to remove one image and swap it in another one. Now that's not the most important part. I mean, it's pretty important, but what's most important is that we've identified a whole new file that we haven't even touched yet. This global.json file. So this is just a big JSON file. I'm gonna reduce the text size. So it's easier to see. Okay, so this is a JSON file. 48-line JSON file, which is just a JavaScript object, key value pairs, right? Which dictate some of the data you see on the website. It's called global.json. And if you look at the header partial, you'll see there are references to global.whatever. So what do you think that's a reference to? Global.json file.
The entire file.
Yes, exactly. So the templating engine is receiving the entire global JSON object, which gives you a set of data to render on the website. So look at this right here on line 2. What does it say?
Okay, feature.
The name of the site, which shows up over here. You see that?
Mhm.
Well, I'm sure we don't all want the same name, right? Like if I get rid of that and replace it with something else, in this case, what will be an appropriate adjustment? Chloe Davis, right? Because we're now creating basically a blog for Chloe Davis. So don't forget to save it. This little circle right here means it's not saved, right? So save it, reload, except turn the server on. I think my server's off. And there it is. Does that make sense? Now remember, we're using the header partial right here, right there. Who can sort of reiterate why we use partials at all?
Chunk of it.
That's what it does. That's what it does. That's correct. Well, my question is, why are we?
Condenses the code.
That's what it does.
Without repeating it.
different places.
So that's correct. So I'm on this page right here, the About page. If I go back to the Home page, what should I see? On the header, the top,
Chloe Davis,
the same thing. Why?
because you changed it in the header,
Right, we used a partial.
the partial.
If we did not use a partial, what would we have to do?
Change it
Change
in
it.
Everywhere.
It changes.
Correct.
It changes in one place and then it just it just
Automatically.
transfers. Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of it just
And
transfers
that's why
everywhere.
we use
Why
partial.
we use the partial.
Right.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It doesn't.
So
Yeah, that actually, now for some reason.
It does. It
didn't
just
make
like
sense
it just
that one
it
thing
clicked.
was
It literally clicked.
Yeah.
So down here we have basically some footer information all the way down here.
Which it obviously is.
So that's coming from the data and the templating engine as well. And that shows up on every page, right? So let's break that down. All this stuff right here shows up on every page. So if we want to identify the HTML, the literal HTML code, where would be like an intuitive place to find that?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
So the bottom here, right? This row down here.
In the footer.
Right, it's the footer, right? The footer shows up on every page. Let's say we want to change that. We don't want this name anymore, right? It shows up on every page, and if we want to change that, if we want to change the contents, you see here, so it still says K feature.
You will go to the footer mustache partial.
Correct. Why would we look in the partial?
Because it'll change
That's
over.
it.
Right, it shows up on every page. So if we go here, there's a footer, just like you said, Rashid. And here, global.copyright is almost certainly what this is, right? But we don't see the actual words. We see curly brace, and then global.copyright. So what does that tell us? Like, where else do we need to go to find the text that we want to actually
In the
change?
JSON.
Which one?
The
Global.json. And make sure you remember which key we're looking for. Copyright. So global. We don't see it here. Just keep moving around until you see it. Copyright. And you see how it's like, you didn't know it would be there, but it is there, which means, okay, I think I get it now. That's how that part of the process will never stop. Like, so that's how programmers figure out like where to find stuff. That's how I do my job. Obviously, it's just harder, but it's the same process. Okay, so pretty safe bet we found what we need. Right, so first of all, we need to change this. Right, it's a new year. And then what do we want to do with that?
Change the name.
Change it, Chloe.
Chloe Davis. Right. And then don't forget to save it. Very common mistake. And then if I reload, again, don't reload it until you know what to expect. So when I reload, what should happen? Yeah, 2020 Chloe Davis. And if that doesn't happen, that means something broke down in your comprehension, which also is very, very common. Happens to me all the time. So that's why you want to be very disciplined in your testing process. Like, all right, before I do anything, what am I expecting here? What's supposed to happen? And then I test it. So, and there we go.
And that should be on each page, so if you went to...
Great question. So let's go to another page. Let's try the About page. And then on the bottom, there it is. Right, why does that work, Rashid?
Because you changed it in the global JSON in the partial.
Almost in the partial.
Yeah.
The keyword there is partial, right?
What's the difference between the partial and say like external CSS or you know how like you can do inline CSS or JavaScript and then you have
It's a big. We'll get to that later. That's more of its own session. So before I wrap up for tonight, what I want you to try is go to the About page. First thing I want you to try is this section right here, what I write. Actually, you know what? That's not even relevant to what we were just doing. I want you to change this. Hi, I'm Ali Stone to hi, I'm Chloe Davis. And I want you to change this picture to like a different picture. Okay, let's try that. Give it about 10 minutes, and then we'll review it. Okay?
So far, all I got was the 2020.
Yeah, mine is not showing up my
Okay, then work on that in between now and 10 minutes. And, call it a day. So, all right, so the objective was to change this text in the image. So if we're on the About template, so if I go to the About Mustache template, let's see, here's one of the images and the title and the description. So we have image, title, description. So here, like, you know, it's been a while since I've even looked at this code. So like right now is where I would be sort of experimenting. I'd be like, am I even in the right spot? So like normally what I would do is I would take this and I'll just like put in some gibberish, right? And save it and then reload. I'm like, okay, that's where I want to be. But this is how I would actually do my job, right? So what I've confirmed there is like I'm in the right spot. So then I go back here, I restore what was already there. And now we're looking at a different file called page. It has a profile section, and then that has a title. These are called nested attributes, nested properties. So if I go, one way I can do it is I can copy the profile section and just do a search for it, right? And look at this, about.json, right? So some of you must have found it because you got it working, right? So like what does that tell you? This is the data that's being piped into the About template. So if I click on profile section, right here is the raw text that corresponds to this. Well, that, right? So that's pretty much a bullseye, like pretty safe bet that that's what we're looking for. So we want to change that to hi, I'm Chloe Davis. And that's the data that I'll get injected into the template. And just so you see kind of how it works on a broader level, is that you see this folder called pages? Mm-hmm. Each one of these JSON files, especially the about and the home, corresponds to a template in the views directory, about and home. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. What that means is the about template has an about JSON file. The home template has a home JSON file that it automatically gets. And global means what you think it means. Everyone gets it. Every page gets this JSON file. Okay? Just to be thorough, that's not a Node Express thing. That's something I built in personally to make it easier to maintain data.
Oh,
Okay?
that's
But
different.
the Node Express part is the templating engine. Okay, that's Node Express. So you should be very clear on that. I built that in personally to make this easier. Okay? That's a turbo thing,
The global
and the page JSON
and
files.
the page JSON.
So in a normal Node Express project, this directory right here wouldn't exist. That's the only distinction. Okay? And you would have to like manually set that up. I just did it automatically.
Is
Okay.
it something that should be? It seems like it should be set up.
It just makes life a lot easier. It's something I was doing on my own projects all the time. So I was like, just make that built into Turbo. And that's what I'm pointing out. Okay? It's important also to point out that you don't have to use it. So if I create a new page like contact.mustache, and I don't create a contact.json, it won't break. It'll be fine. So it's like an optional feature. Okay, so you don't have to use it. I recommend you use it, but you don't have to. Okay? So if I save that and I reload, I should, once I turn on the server, that's on. So I should see that. And if I go back to the about.mustache, we can see the IMG tag right here. That most likely is the HTML tag for this image right here. Pretty safe bet. But if I want to be sure, what can I do? I could just remove it, right? This is an image rather than text, right? So I can just remove it. And when I reload, my hope is that the image will go away, which it does. Right? That means we have the right spot. So we have page, profile section, IMG section. So if I go to the about JSON, we have profile section, IMG. That's really just be IMG. But so if I highlight this whole image URL, copy that and put it into a browser, I will see the image that corresponds to that area of the code. That means I hit the bullseye. Like that's what I'm looking for. So now we can like confidently make adjustments knowing that we are in the correct location. Okay, am I going too fast? Does this make sense? Okay. So I'm going to go back to the Turbo site. I'm just going to stick with this guy because it, be consistent. So there's a nice picture. So I right click on that, copy the image address. Okay, and then I'm going to go back here, remove that, just backspace out of that, and paste it in. And again, I'll go over this on the next session, but don't this equals S1080. Just remove that. It's a query parameter, so we just want to remove that and save it. And if I reload the local host, there you go. And that'll do it. And now I'm going to do one last thing, or two last things. I'm going to, and everyone should do this with me. I want everyone to follow along, okay? I'm going to turn off the server, Control C. Now, we started today's session pretty much by deploying right away. There's a reason I did that, so that whenever we make changes now, we can push, this is called pushing to our server, we can push it to the server and make sure it works in a real environment. Because it doesn't matter if it works in practice, it's got to work in a game, right? So we got to put it in a real environment now and make sure it still works. So we do turbo. Who remembers the command to push it up? Mm-hmm. And since we already did it to start the session, all the configuration should already be set. Like you already logged in, you already did the turbo, the API key, the site ID. You should have already done all that. So we don't have to do it again. Like once is enough, and then you never have to do it again. So now the deploy is complete for me. If I copy and paste that, you're gonna see it actually hasn't changed yet. In other words, like, oh no, it did not work. Unsuccessful. And let me explain why. It's a simple adjustment. We changed 2 of these JSON files, global JSON and about JSON. Remember that? Those changes are only on local. They're only on your computer. We have to push those changes to the server. Very easy to do. So the way you do that is you go back to your terminal, and we want to push the global changes first. So it's very simple. We do turbo, page, global, the name of the file. So turbo, then page, and then the name of the file, minus the extension. And what that does is it takes your changes from your computer, your local environment, whatever you have locally, it pushes those changes to the server. And then we do turbo, page, and then what? We change 2 files, global and what?
About.
So what do I type here? About. Now we push those changes to the server. And that's it. So we go back, Chloe Davis, and this is on the internet, not local. You guys see that?
So you always have to do it for every single page you changed it? That you
Yeah,
changed?
it's only 2 pages
Is it
though.
supposed to say
Right,
error
I
not
know.
implemented?
For this one?
Sorry?
Is it supposed to say error not implemented when you're on the terminal? 'Cause when I
No,
did turbo page about.
something's off there. You might be in the wrong directory. But the important thing to remember there is that whatever you did locally isn't on the server until you make those adjustments.
Okay.
Mine is still loading.
And one last thing, bless you, if you want to just see, bless you. Another way you can change those pages is going to your Turbo account, whatever, and then clicking on your site and then the manage link. And then click on configuration. And you can do it here as well. So you click on global, same thing. Chloe, you see? Site name, page, and then there's an about option. Click on that. And like this is the data we just pushed up. We can change it here as well. You see that? So change the image, it'll give you an upload option, etc. I don't want you to think of it that way because that's more for, the way I built this is so that you can work with clients who are non-programmers. So let's say your aunt, who is a lawyer, wants you to build a website for her law firm, but she's not going to open the terminal. She doesn't know any of that stuff. She's going to go here. That's why I built this. Okay? So maybe your aunt's like, that's not me. I want to change that. And then she doesn't have to call you to make those changes. Right. Make sense? But I want you to get used to the terminal way of doing things. That's how professional developers work. Okay? Good. Who got it up on the staging environment?
I don't think I made my changes in the global. I think that's the issue. I know that is.
Okay. What about you?
Mine is still loading. Now I'm doing the turbo page.
Okay, let's wait until at least one person gets it up. I'm hoping at least 2 people will, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I have it. I want it.
Send me a link, shoot me a text with the actual link. I want to put it on the board.
My pictures and change just some other stuff like technology. I just was. So.
Yeah, shoot me a text with the link. I saw you went to BU. Is that right?
I'm actually in the grad program,
Oh yeah. What are you studying?
computer information systems.
Okay, that's an online program.
Yep.
Okay. So you're quote unquote in BU right now.
Yep.
Okay.
I built a website and everything. It's my last semester. So.
Oh, it's the same one. Good. All right, great. So here's the site that Kia pushed up. Okay, so you got to change the configuration
Yes.
file. So turbo page about, that's the command.
Okay.
Let's do that one first. So turbo page about.
The turbo page about is giving me an error. The turbo page global, it did it. It's a page successfully configured. Is that I didn't save something correctly? Because I know on the local site, the image and like the.
I'll take a look at it in a second. So, what about you, Kia?
And I do it in the terminal, just turbo page about.
Yeah, make sure you're in the root level of the project, the root directory.
Yeah.
Is it giving you?
Giving me an error not implemented. Yeah, mine is doing the same thing.
Okay, let me take a look at that. Just to be sure, let's say like things just aren't working for whatever reason. Just you can kind of restart from here. Go to turbo, log in. Make sure you're logged in. So Kia, this will pretty certainly work for you.
Okay.
And then make sure you're logged into the right account. Make sure you're in the root directory. Okay. And once you've confirmed that, the next command is turbo connect. And then,
enter before you.
Wait, so turbo login and then turbo connect.
well, turbo login is going to ask you for your email and password. Do that.
Oh yeah, it's asking me for
Yeah.
email. Okay.
Sorry. Put in your email and password. Turbo login. And just put in your email and password. And then once you've confirmed that, do turbo connect. And then make sure you have your site ID and all that stuff ready to go. This guy. And just reconnect.
So it says logged in,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not asking for site ID. or anything.
You gotta do turbo connect again. Turbo
Oh, turbo
connect and then
connect,
enter.
Okay.
Kia, at least for you, this was certainly the issue. I can't speak on for them, but this is definitely the problem for you. Okay, and then once you enter your site ID and your API key, just for a good measure, do a turbo deploy again, because it doesn't hurt. Just do that again. Just redeploy the site.
And then after the turbo deploy, it's gotta be the turbo page global and the turbo page.
You got it. Right, let it go all the way through, and then reset the pages. You got it. Good. You're really starting to get this. Please just keep practicing, keep doing it. This will work if you keep doing it. Most people just quit, and that's why they fail. That's it. Just keep doing it, and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Something I used to explain in workshops is people have this notion that like all this stuff comes natural to me. If people saw how much coding I do every day for years, they'd be like, "You have no life but coding." I'd be, "Yeah, you're right. That's true. I'm not saying it's healthy. I'm not saying it's good for me, but that's yeah. I code an obscene amount every day, 7 days a week for 10 years. This is what I do. I like it. I enjoy it. So, people think like, "Oh, you must have just picked it up, like a duck to water." And I'm like, no, it was hard, but I coded just 7, 8, 10 hours a day every day. Like the first 3 years, or so, 2 or 3 years, it really was every day, because I was so like insecure and worried about like not catching up. Because at that point, remember too, like I wasn't like a high school kid. Like I was just out of college. I was like, I'm already behind. Like I'm already falling behind. So I was like, I gotta catch up now. I gotta double time this. And so for 2 years, every day, every single day, birthday, Christmas, whatever, just every day. And that was more motivated by fear than anything. But after maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I don't code every day now, but like, it's not a chore. Like I enjoy it. If I had like a week of just nothing to do, most of that time would be spent by coding. That's about it. A little bit of watching TV, a little bit of working out, and that's about it. And then the other 90% coding.
So the same thing. I remember. But when I went to my link, I'm supposed to see my changes, right, of the image. And
Well, if you're getting an error message, then it's not going to work. So I'll debug that. But like I said, at least for Kia, this was certainly the root of the issue. So I didn't take a look at your two in particular.
Change, but I think it's something that
I'll take a look in a second. But Kia, what about you?
Oh yeah, it's backed up.
Don't forget turbo page global, turbo page about. So once it's deployed, you do turbo page about. You have to reset the pages.
Okay.
And then you should see, well, that's keys, but you should see this. On the next session, whether it's Saturday or Monday, well, I'll make a decision on that soon. We'll go through these and examine like how to render different blog posts based on the category. Okay, and that'll pretty much be a wrap for this template or this theme. And then basically the way the workshops are going to go are like we just go through a bunch of every week we do a new theme and we just sort of explore the intricacies and kind of how the pieces are put together until it becomes sort of second nature. Okay. Kia, any luck?
I forgot to put the global part. I put it out. But I remember for me it was turbo page global.
Global, right. Okay. Well, we'll get to it next time. It's getting a little bit late tonight. But, all right. So I'll send everyone the video, same as usual. I'm still 50-50 on this Saturday, but definitely after this Saturday, it's going to be just Monday, Wednesday. And like I said, I'll go long on Monday. Like we went half hour long, right? But like I don't mind going long on Monday, Wednesday. And hopefully that'll make up the time. So if everyone's okay with that. So we'll do it that way. Okay? Cool. All right. Thanks for coming. And I'll see you either Saturday or Monday.